Hi everyone, for my artist talk, I would like to present my video about the real world and the world behind the screen, so-called flattened flat space. I hope you to see a new world at the end of the video. Flattened flat screen is everywhere around me at any time. My iPhone, MacBook, iPad, TV, and etc. Turn on and off the alarm, check my schedules and emails, follow up on Instagram and Facebook, makes my artworks, research, pay bills, Venmo, Skype and text my bae and friends. The physical space that I can feel, touch, and smell, and the space beyond the screen which I cannot feel, touch, and smell are not the same. Yet, it's still hard to say those two spaces are separated. The space beyond the screen is not observable, but it takes a portion of my days. You know that your interest browsing history changes the types of posting and advertisements on your Chrome that online service companies provide. Based on that appeared postings, categories, or frequency, your interest can be varied at the same time. It has somewhat impact on the general lifestyle, such as your interests, political preference, sexual orientation, morality, and so on. Have you ever wondered about the space behind the screen? What does the space look like, and how does it work? What kind of space is that? The space we cannot explore. Should you recognize that the space is two-dimensional world, since the screen has two dimensions? Does two-dimensional screen means two-dimensional world? Wait, but is the screen considered as two dimensions or three dimensions or something higher than that? Maybe we should recognize it as the three dimensions because one can indirectly belong to the space behind the screen through tools such as laptops, smartphones, and tablets. Or we may not even be able to define the dimension of that space because it does not physically exist. How does the time flow in the digital space? Does it flow different than the actual physical space, or there is no time?
Welcome to Flattened Flat Space.
Liquid crystal is a material that makes up the flat screen. A liquid crystal is a state of matter which has properties between those of conventional liquids and those of solid crystals. For instance, a liquid crystal may flow like a liquid, but its molecules may be oriented in a crystal-like way. It is similar to a Pokemon character Ditto. It has an ability to reconstitute its entire cellular structure to transform into whatever it sees. Ditto rearranges its cellular structures to transform into another shape by recombining its own cellular structure to transform into other life forms. Liquid crystal visualizes data by varying the arrangement of molecules upon the data transmitted by flattened flat space with a unique pattern of line direction. Like Ditto rearranges and transforms cells upon the object creatures. Now, let's walk through groups of liquid crystals. At the end, there is a space called flattened flat space. The flattened flat spaces consisted of multiple layers of gridded clouds, and each grid on the clouds embodies phenomenon, memory, fact, or feeling in the real time and space which will eventually turns into data and last in a flat form. Meanwhile, the clouds embodies category, share and transfer the data. These clouds move, evaporate, and join other clouds. Then they transform into one bigger cloud, scatter into a layer, or change the form or density. We live in three-dimensional space on top of another dimension, time, and we can say that we are living in the four-dimensional space-time. The flattened flat screen is a medium, platform, that bridges between three-dimensional space and another dimension, flattened flat space. Now we have a higher dimensional space, but we haven't added one, the time dimension. Actually, time dimensions, plural. Different time zones unify in the flattened flat space, but the flattened flat space time zone, again, flows with different speeds due to internet condition. Two different time zones in four-dimensional space-time and flattened flat space-time zone, and modified flattened flat space-time zone by internet condition. There are already four different dimensions. Add those four time dimensions to three-dimensional space or flattened flat space.
Oh, I'm not here to do the math.
The flattened flat space compresses time and space, and it has its own time zone and space. So, people can meet and talk with others in different places and time zones. A flat digital screen, 2 dimensions, is a junction between one 4D space-time and another. Flat screens take people to higher dimensions of the space-time. 4 dimensions at the lowest. 2 dimensions plus 2 dimensions is greater or equal to 4 dimensions. I can do math. In the flattened flat space, it is possible to gather different 3-dimensional spaces into one place through 2-dimensional flat screens. The flattened flat spaces consisted of multiple layers of 3-dimensional spaces. Even unifying different time zones is possible. The time is affected by the gravity. As you move closer to the center of gravity, the time goes slower, and moving farther from the center of gravity makes the time goes faster. Unlike the real time, in flattened flat space, where it has no gravity, the time is affected by the internet conditions such as speed, server, number of users, or ping. In the flattened flat space, 0 gravity. All time zones are likely to flow on a constant basis. But the internet condition can change the time flow. A weightlessness state is very similar to the data floating on this flattened flat space. The data floats everywhere. Now, let me introduce you an amazing data collector, the Big Brother. He will explain to you the exact meaning of data and how it gets formed and classified.
Hi, I am Big Brother living and working in the flattened flat space. Thank you for inviting me. Data represents a unit of various forms such as numbers, images, and words. When data as a singular combines with a multiple of collections, it becomes data. And when these various data produce meaningful values, the values are called information. For example, the number -10 alone doesn't mean anything, but if the weather is -10K, it creates a meaning of cold temperatures. Further, if the weather is -10K today, it's pretty cold, and we are informed to refrain from going out or wearing a thick coat. For your information, -10K equals to -283 Celsius or -477.67 Fahrenheit. Well, I don't know if a coat is gonna help. Maybe you will need to burn the house. There are 2 basic forms of data: qualitative data and quantitative data. The quantitative data is divided into discrete data and continuous data. If you are not with me, let me give you a brief explanation. The qualitative data does not contain numeric values. Meanwhile, quantitative data contains some kind of numeric values. For example, today's weather is cold is qualitative data that cannot be quantified, but today's weather is -10K is a quantitative data with numbers. Another forms of data are discrete and continuous data. Discrete data is countable data. For example, 1 person, 2 people, 3 bottles, 5 bottles, 1 coat and 1,000,000 coats. Continuous data is measurable data such as weight, temperature, length and so on. This means that -10K is quantitative, more specifically, continuous data. There are 2 types of data depending on the data type. One is called structured data and the other is called unstructured data. Structured data is easy to analyze and simple to identify. On the other hand, unstructured data is an unorganized and complex form of analysis. For example, a company has been collecting customer data, sales data, order data and employee data. When all these data are organized and analyzed, they become structured data. On the other hand, the unstructured data is a diverse and complex form of data. For example, voice, video and images are unstructured data. Based on the source of data, data can be classified into internal data or external data. Internal data, for example, refers to data that is not open externally and it requires a significant level of security. It's a common concept for the sales data, customer data and various information held by a company. External data is the opposite of internal data. It's open to public and can be easily accessed via internet, news, books, radio and all other media. Expansion of smartphone and social media gave me a hard time categorizing and utilizing data. But, thank you, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and etc. You made my life much easier.
Thank you for your time, Big Brother. As Big Brother mentioned, As social media and the smartphone's usage increase, corporations can collect terrace of users' data. And all those data is floating in digital panopticon which has no boundary nor measurable size. Further, users who enter the flattened flash space can read, see, and search the floating data. The flattened flash space is designed to prevent users from recognizing whether their traces have been seen by others. Data collectors, like Big Brother, don't collect data from only one single source. They roam and wander within the digital panopticon. By doing that, the data collectors can collect broader and more data from users. Plus, there is more chance that users won't notice that their information is being collected. Data collectors will keep furtively collecting your very frank and accurate data until you notice it. Oh, and one important thing is that everyone can be a big brother in the flattened flat space. It is a very equal, egalitarian space, society, because one can use another's data and that another can use my data as well. I am gonna use your data. Oops, does it sound like a jungle? Another advantage of the flattened flat space. It's designed to allow all users can categorize and catalog their data on their own within a given frame. That's how people became able to digitize atypical and invisible data and get them into a regulated frame. These data can be patterned and digitized in a digital panopticon. Invisible things can be seen, indefinable things can be defined, and non-material can be materialized at least. The enormous amount of data collected in the digital panopticon surfs on the wave of blue mirage quite often. Thus, the original becomes blurry, vague, and obscure when it travels to the 3+ n-dimension flattened flash space from the real 4-dimensional world where it used to be all real. Now the original becomes data. After it becomes data, the original form gets distorted or copied in the flattened flat space. During that procedure, new texts, images, or videos get blended with the reproduced original and reproduced in another flattened flat world. Eventually, data is jumbled with each other. Now, it's difficult to tell the difference between objects and objects or objects and backgrounds. Blue. That's what takes the most portion of the value of recreated original. Especially number 022 FD or RGB 20252. This blue amongst all other blues, this blue is a very creative space. A person can create another visual image by applying another video, image or text in this blue. Because blue is a space where infinite editing is possible. With this blue, the flattened flash space users can edit their own image, text, or data easier with many programs and applications. Users can do a lot of things with data like stretching, deleting, pasting, copying, composing, distorting, twisting, cutting, and so on. The created data through this editing or copied and shared data by multiple people has significant difference from the original, but through that editing and sharing, another world has been created.